So we've got slides for the first time. Ricardo doesn't like slides, but there's a few here anyway that were done for something else. So, array.find, array.filter. Two very useful array methods. I think a lot of people have used them already, and you'll be forced to use them later on in your CodeFlix project, or at least in the Codeary training if you haven't already. Forced is a bit strong, but it's the best way to do it. So, what do they look like? Well, the general syntax is like that. So, array just means any array instance that we have created in our JavaScript programs. It doesn't literally mean the word array. I'll put it with a little letter A, hopefully to avoid confusion from the built-in array object. But in other words, if we have an array that contains something, we can chain either the find or the filter method onto it. And it just takes one input. However, that input is a callback function. So of course that function itself can take multiple inputs. We'll see what this looks like in practice very shortly when we jump into some snippets. But just be aware that what you're putting inside of the find and filter functions is a function itself. And that should return true or false, or a truthy or falsy value. The verbose syntax is down the bottom. So that function can take 4 inputs. One of them is required, and whatever we name that will be the current element in the find and the filter. It'll be the current element in the array that we've called find or filter on. We could reference the index, we could reference the original array, and we could pass an optional this object into the find or the filter methods as well. So that's the absolute maximum number of inputs we can have for this method. What do I mean by a callback function?
It means that it's going to return something. Yes?
Means that it's going to return something. It would be a useful callback function, definitely, if it did return something, but that's not really what callback means, because we can have other functions that return things, right, that aren't callback functions.
Is it like an internal function, almost? If that's a terrible way of explaining it, but like...
Internal's a bit better way of explaining it, yeah.
Like, if you're... So, for example, if you're doing array.find, your callback function would find something to a certain criteria, like, say, find the first one in capital letters in a string, or something like in an array, or something like that, like it's setting a criteria. Kind of.
Yes and no. I mean, the definition is just, it's a function that runs at a later point in time. So it's a callback function because internally the find method calls it at various points. So the callback function doesn't just run once. It runs once for the first element in the array, and then the find method calls back to the same function and calls it again. Then when it's run that bit of code, it calls back to the same function. Yeah, so it's a way of looping over or reusing a function internally. It's a callback function. If that confuses you, then you can just think of it as a function for now. But it's just a function that is being reused again at a certain point in time, and it's called programmatically, yeah, rather than...
So it means up to what is inside the function, yes?
It's a delayed function. It's a delayed function, yeah? It doesn't run there and then. It's called back afterwards at a later point in time. Yeah? That's it. Do I need this one? Yeah. Let's look at a snippet first, and then we'll talk about what each function returns and how we structure it and stuff like that. So we'll do some tests on the platform later, but for now, let's just jump over to DevTools, and I can share these snippets with you later. Ooh, where's it gone? Okay, my lovely prepared snippet is no longer there, but that's fine. We'll bring it up again. let's start with number 1. So we've got a function. We don't want numbers present in the array. Let's just say we want greater than, give me a number, guys. Greater than 10, thank you. Okay. Oh. I think the idea was that we passed in a value that it was greater than. So let's pass in 10. Right. We've defined an array. That array contains some numbers. And conveniently, we've called that array numbers. Because it's an array, we can use the find method on it. And we must pass in a callback function to test whether each number is greater than 10. So, how would we write this callback function? Yeah, let's do it the long way to begin with. Yeah, let's use the old syntax, the function syntax. So, function doesn't need a name, so I'm not going to give it a name. So it would look like that, right? Function, open the brackets. Oh, didn't mean to swap them around. That was clever. No, I can't do it backwards though. Open the curly braces, and then close the find method. That's all that's doing, yeah? So all in one line. That would look like that, yeah? Write a function, give space for the inputs, space for the function body, and close the find method. Alright. What goes inside that function? Firstly, what is the first argument that is required of that callback function? Element, yep. So if we went back to the slides, it said current element is our first and only required input. So you might see this listed as, my God, where's everything gone? There. So we could put current value as our first argument. Then, how do I write a check on that current value to see whether it is greater than or equal to 10? Okay, yeah, we can return something from that function, or even the ret run, which is my most common typing mistake. Current value, awesome. What was that, Tim? Yeah, greater than or equal to what? I could put 10, but as I've got 10 as an input, can I just make it dynamic and use value? Why -1? Because I've used greater than or equal, is that what you're saying?
No, that's, if it's going to be -1, it's going to do the same array.
I don't understand what you're trying to point out. Yeah? Let's just leave it like that for now. So the current value is greater than the inputted value. So for each number, on the first loop of the find method, the current value takes the value of 1. It then compares that to the inputted value of 10 and asks, is 1 greater than 10? True or false? Is 1 greater than 10? False. Yeah. So if it's false, what happens? Doesn't. Well, okay. Yeah. All right. The inner function will return false, but what happens inside of the find method? What does find then do if we return false? It just moves on to the next one. It says no, that failed the test. Move on to the next one. So then we get 4. Does it move on or does it return it? Move on. 9. Okay. 25. So now 25 greater than 10 returns true. And what does that mean the find method does? It what? It returns the value of 25. Yeah, so now the find method has stored the value of 25. Does it go any further?
No. Stop.
No, the find method does not go any further. So it just returns the first matching value in the array. We need to make sure we've got a return there to make sure that our function actually returns something. Yeah? Let's run the code. Hopefully we're going to get 25. Nope. So number present in the array. Yep. So make sure if you're invoking a function, you give it the correct name. And we get 25. Good. Progress. Yeah, all right. Questions on that first? Do we understand what find's doing at each step? Do I need to explain it a bit slower? Okay, cool. I expect 100% in your beginner find training then. How do you often see the inner callback function written inside of the find method?
Arrows.
As an arrow function, yeah? So to change this into an arrow function, we can delete the function keywords and we can put an arrow there and everything else can stay the same essentially, right? People were doing this in the board challenge and they said, well, if we do it all on one line, we don't have to use the return statement. I could do something like that. Yeah, so it's up to you. If it all nicely fits on one line, then you're welcome to put it all on one line. Still works. If it's a bit longer, put an open bracket after the arrow. And then you still won't, what have I done wrong here? Then current value. Oh yeah, so we need one more extra bracket. So one to close this one, and the other one will close the find method. That will still work. However, if for some reason it didn't have an input and we wanted to define the value in here, I don't really know why we do that, but let's just humour me. Doesn't like that. Why not? Yeah, essentially we're not allowed multiple statements or variable declarations inside of these brackets. We can only have one thing listed, yeah, one return statement. So we can't return a let variable declaration. That doesn't make sense. You couldn't somewhere in your code write return let. That just doesn't make sense, yeah? It should throw an error, right? Yeah, good. Yeah, unexpected. You either return something or you declare something. Could we do numbers dot push? No, again, we couldn't do that, right? Why not? Yeah, we have more than one statement again, right? So it's the same thing. We can't have more than one statement inside of these brackets. Cool. So if you use brackets, then one statement only allowed. If you do perhaps need to use two statements, just wrap it in curly braces. And if you wrap it in curly braces, you're also going to need to specify what part of that you want to return. Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say the arrow replaced?
The arrow replaced the function keyword. So you have arrow functions and you have standard functions. So this is a standard function here. Function, the name, inputs, function body block, Here we have inputs, arrow, function body block. It's a little bit shorter form of writing a function. So if you see an arrow like this, then that's your arrow function, because it's not a greater than or equals, because that would be the other way around, right? That's the greater than or equals symbol. The other way around is an arrow function. There are some slight differences, but we won't go into them here. Alright. If I change my find to a filter, how is that going to be different? Can I just do that? Are they the same essentially in terms of their syntax?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. If you were shaking your head, change the direction and you've got it right. Cool. So what will the output of that now be if I'm using filter instead of find?
It won't stop at the first value.
It what?
It's not going to stop at the first.
It's not going to stop at the first truthy value. No, I agree with that. So we'll say 1. Is that greater than... we haven't even got a limit now. Let's put a limit back in. Is 1 greater than 10? Nope. 4? No. Nope. 25? Yes. So it stores that 25, but then it keeps going. Yeah, it then checks 4. Nope. Then checks 36. Yeah, that's greater, greater, greater. Nope. Greater. And then we've got another one. So what's our final output value?
Is it an array with those stored values?
It's definitely an array. Filter always, always, always returns an array. There is no condition where it does not return an array. Unless you write code that just doesn't work, right? But then that's not filter returning it, it's your code breaking the compiler. So filter always returns an array.
Right.
Yep.
Because you put numbers.push 99, does that mean every time it's going to run this, it's going to push 99 to numbers? And then if you do it in filter, isn't it going to get like stuck in a loop of just like push 99 and returning something?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I've created an infinite loop, which I don't want to run, so I'm going to stick numbers.push 90 down outside for now. Cool. What will it now return? What will be inside of the array? 25 will be in there. Yeah. Anything else?
And 99.
Okay, yes, so an array with 25, 36, 36 once or twice? 36 twice, yeah. Then 16, 44 and 99, hopefully. Let's see what we get. Oh, what have I messed up again now? Value is not defined because I called it limit. Make sure your variable naming is consistent. Good, and then we get the correct output. If I change value to be 110, what is the result of this function now? Empty. Empty what?
Empty array.
Empty array, yeah, because filter always returns an array. Don't forget that. So it returns an empty array this time if none of the elements match. If I change it back to find, what does find return when there are no matches?
It's gonna be as well empty array.
Empty array, do we think? Any other guesses?
Undefined.
Undefined. Any other guesses?
It's not defined at all.
That's the same guess. Any other guesses? Okay, we said undefined 3 times. Undefined is the correct answer. Yeah? So it's looking for a value, and if it doesn't find a matching value, it returns undefined. Yeah?
So find doesn't return array.
So find doesn't return an array.
Oh,
It never returns an array unless one of the values in the array is an array, right? But then you'd have to have a different test to capture that. But yeah, it returns the value of the element. So the only way it could return an array is if an element was an array. Cool. That's some of the main points on find and filter. Any questions so far? What else do we need to know? Yep, so we've covered that. Returns the first element, and the filter returns all the elements that match our little test that we wrote. Yep, so filter goes through every element in the array, even if it finds a match. Find stops immediately as soon as it finds one truthy match. And then we've just covered that. Find returns undefined if no truthy value is found. Filter an empty array. And just an important note there, I guess, that find and filter do not mutate or change the original array in any way. Yeah, so that original array still exists. Yeah, okay, and I will illustrate that last point now. Matching value. So let's say we just stored the result of find inside of a variable. And let's change that to our value of 30. And we could return matching value. What's matching value going to be? An array. I'm using find. Is it going to be an array? It's going to be a number. What number specifically now? Now that I've changed my value to 30 as the... Yep, so the first one that is greater than 30 is 36. So this should return 36. It does. Awesome. But if I return numbers, the original array, has it removed that 36 out of it, or has it just left it alone? Yeah, it's left it alone, right? That's the last point that we just said. The original array is exactly, well, it sort of is exactly as it was, but we did numbers.push 99, so we have got the 99 on the end there. So push does modify the original array, but find and filter do not. So you'll find a lot of the modern methods do not mutate or manipulate the array. Sorry, do not mutate the array in any way. It's because pure functions are easier to test. So given the same input, they return the same output. Whereas doing things like push, no, we could have done weird things and kept adding 99 to the array, and that would get us stuck in an infinite loop. Cool. Shall we look at some other examples? Or any other questions first before we move on? Alright, I'll take that as no questions. How about this one? So this time the elements in our array are not just numbers. They are objects. And let's define an adult as over 18 for the purpose of this exercise. How would I return an array containing the objects that belong to the adults?
You have to access it using dot notation.
We have to access it using dot notation.
You have to
access what?
the age,
Yep.
using dot notation.
Okay.
You have to write the callback function.
Yeah, so as we're just learning find and filter, let's again say we need a callback function in there. Let's write that callback function as an arrow function, because that's the way we'll often see it. Put our curly braces, and then we write our test to return true or false inside of here. So what do I want to test? I want to test whether their age, yeah, is greater than 18. But how am I going to do that exactly? That's pseudocode at the moment, right? That's not JavaScript code.
So you would just do like return group dot or you do group dot age dot
Group?
no
What's group? Group is the whole array.
the element even that you're
Okay, so let's first name our element so that we can do something, yeah, with it. So the first thing, we need to put that required argument into our function,
It's age. It can be age.
which is person. It's not the age, yeah? Each element in the array is an object which contains both a name and an age property. So we can't just put age directly in there, definitely not.
If you
If you deconstruct it, yes. Can we do that in a second to show how we could do that? Is that alright? Yeah?
I was just asking, like,
Yeah, we definitely can.
call that function.
So let's call it person for now. So each element in the array represents a person, and we want to compare person. How do we access age? Yeah, dot syntax is the easiest way to access a property if we know what property we're after inside of an object. So now, on the first iteration, what's going to happen? What's person going to be on the first iteration? Just person, not the whole thing for now. So just breaking it down. Person is going to be definitely not undefined. No. Okay, so we're jumping right ahead. I just want to do it step by step. So it's going to be the object that contains Bobby and 13. Yeah. Person.age. What is the value of person.age going to be on the first iteration of the filter callback? 13, yep. So we've got return 13 greater than 18. Is that true or false? False. So therefore, does this object get included in the final array? Nope. And then what happens? The callback gets called again. This time, what's the value of person? Nope. Person is not 7. What's the value of person? This second object. Yeah. So what's person.age? 7. Yeah. Is 7 greater than 18? No. So therefore we don't put that object in the final array. The callback gets called again. Yeah. So this is the whole definition of a callback function. It gets called again and again and again. Yeah. At a later point in the program. What's person on the third iteration? The object containing George. Yep. Person.age is 44. That's true. So therefore we would include George in the final array, the object containing George in the final array, and the same for Ava. Yeah. So what's our final output going to be for those that jumped way ahead? Lisa, you said it. George and Ava. What, as strings or as objects? Yeah. These two objects are going to be in a final array. Let's see.
It's gonna be array of
There's two objects, array of 2 items, and inside at index 0 we have the George object, at index 1 we have the Ava object. If we just wanted their names, how would we do that? If we wanted George as a string, comma Ava as a string, how would we do that?
Just append name and beginning of
Append name, yeah. Where do I append name?
you have to
Person.name, what, up the top? Or person.name.age? What am I doing?
just after the semicolon. The first semicolon.
Here?
No, just below.
Oh, that's too big now.
We can take it the variable and then variable.
Okay, that might be clearer for people to understand. Yep. So let adults equal what we had before. And then, do I want to return something? Or, yeah? Adults.name. Gonna work, guys, or not?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'll show you that it doesn't work, and then we'll explain why. Undefined. Ooh, so adults.name is undefined. Why is that? Everyone's got a name property. What's adults at this point in time? An array. Yeah. Does the array have a dot name property? No. It has a dot length property, sure, but we want to get the name
Yeah.
of each element inside the array.
You're returning a number, so you should return a value.
So what's your solution to try and get... So I'll show you what I want at the end, right? So I want the output to be 2 strings. George, comma, Ava. Sure, there's many ways to get there, but if you can offer me one solution that works.
Can you push to the empty array?
Can we push to an empty array?
I mean, should we get in?
If we create an empty array, yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Sure. And then you're going to loop over it and all that stuff.
And then you could push.
Okay, anyone got a better method?
You could do an if statement. As,
Could do an if
kind of
statement?
Return, so if person.age over 18, return person.name if we just want the names, or return person if we want all the details.
But you don't need it. I think you can use map.
Thank you. We could use map. I know we haven't spoke about map yet, but it was on the board challenge this week, so I'm hoping that you...
The map is the best one to model.
I think the map is definitely the best one.
To mutate.
So again, map loops over each element in the array, and it just transforms each element in the array in some way. So if we've got a whole object, we can transform it just into part of that object. So our whole object is an adult, yeah? And we just want the adult's name. That's all we want. If we try that, we get what we want.
Right. In your filter function, can you have the second line, like after the return line?
Not after the return, because it's...
Sorry, I don't mean. I mean, can you have 2 lines?
Yeah, yeah. What first line do you want?
As person.age bigger than 18, and then the second line return person.name. Would something like that work?
No. Because the way the filter method works is it's limited in what that callback function can pass up to the result of filter. So this just evaluates to true or false. We need something that evaluates to truthy or falsy in here. When it evaluates to true, filter stores the element inside of a new array. That's all it can do.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're limited by the original data of the array. Yeah, whatever the element was gets pushed into the resultant array from find or filter. There's no way that you could manipulate what it returns and return just part of that element or a different element entirely. No, unfortunately not. But it's not much extra to do, right, to chain on that map there. Where else do I want to take this?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. To what, sorry?
You must use map.
You don't have to, but I think it's the simplest way to do it. Otherwise, you would have to do something as you suggested. Create a for loop, and then for each element in that array, let's manipulate it in some way and return a string rather than an object. Yeah, map is custom made for that sort of task. Yeah, to return part of an object.
So this keyword map,
hmm
what does it mean? This map.
So map is a method, and map just means take one thing and
but
map it into something different. So it's an array method. It can be used on any array.
But it's not a drawing.
It's not what, sorry?
Acronym?
Acronym? No, it's not an acronym. No, it's a word in English. Yeah, often you'll get it in mathematics. You have one-to-one mappings or one-to-many mappings, all those sorts of things. We could have, of course, just chained on the dot map on the end there. That also works. But I think it was clearer to store it in a variable. But you could have done that. Same thing.
The result is an array of.
And the result is what I've got there. Yeah? Yeah, an array of 2 strings. If I'd done map into the age, we would end up with so what are those values, just to be clear? Yep, so we'd have an array of 2 elements, 44 and 40. Yeah, if we'd mapped it into the age.
And we can do it adult age equal 10.
If you want to define an adult as being over 10, yeah. If you're ripping people off with ticket prices at your local attraction, yeah, absolutely, you could do that. Now what will we get? Should we go back to name? Makes more sense. What's our resultant array now? Who said something?
Bobby, George, and Ava.
Is it Bobby, George and Ava? I absolutely agree with that. So we now have 3 elements in our array, which you can't see. There we go.
But this is what I want to do it. We can put adult.name equal I don't know, Gary.
Adult.name equal Gary.
So it's gonna be down there 3 times Gary.
No, because we can't return adult.name assigned to something, as far as I'm aware. It might work. We might get 3 Garys. No, it's going to throw an error. Yeah, Gary is not defined. Oh, you want as a string, obviously. Yeah, sorry.
No?
Yeah, okay, it does work. But it's a weird way to do it. Yeah. I mean, if you want to do that, just get rid of adult.name, right? And we can have 3 Garys. Yeah. Yeah. So it just returns whatever's on the right hand side of the arrow, essentially, for each element in the array. If we hard code something, it will give us that. If we give it something dynamic, like each element's name property, then it will transform into that. Yeah. Do you want to do one question on the platform? Yeah, but the takeaway is that, or the takeaways are that find and filter are array methods. Find will return just one value that passes your conditional test, and filter will return all the values inside of an array that pass your conditional test. Yeah, and that's it. If your data's a bit more complicated, that's when we need to maybe chain on an extra method like map. I can give you these snippets. This is quite a nice one. We can find out who's the real doctor out of all of those. Is it the witch doctor? Is it Ricardo, the coding doctor? The coding god, whatever you want to call him. And just return the correct person there. So I can give you those sort of snippets and you can play around with that a little bit more. I think there's that a specific filter one. Yeah, so there's that question on the platform, the filter one. But we can do it in the platform or do a different question. Anyone want to summarize anything else? I always think Lisa's got a doppelganger, right, when I see this. Like, hang on, Lisa's there, but she's also here. No, I know. It's just intermediate or beginner. What would you prefer, guys? Are people okay with intermediate or?
As long as it's not that first question, because I know the first question that one is so hard.
Alright, let's do one of each. Beginners, would you like find or filter? Filter. You're not a beginner. Beginners, would you like find or filter? Let's still go filter. Alright. Play again. So we've got the get positive numbers. We've done something very similar to that already. Any requests? We've got get capital letters. That was an object-based one. We've got a date-based one. Or we've got the string-based one. Any preference? No. Huh? Say what?
Date?
Where was the date one? This one, number 4. Okay? Cool. So can we see the question? We want to know how many days are in a bank holiday out of the list of provided dates. The isBank holiday property will help you to identify the targeting dates. Does that even make sense? Okay, let's just identify which day is a bank holiday out of this input. So it's already been classified as a bank holiday or not for us by the value of this property. So again, how do we access that property to return the correct number of bank holidays? Return dates.filter. It's a really good place to start, right? So we got dates as our input, which is what sort of data type? A JavaScript object? No, dates isn't a JavaScript object.
Array of objects.
Dates is an array of objects, yeah. It has to be an array, otherwise we couldn't use filter on it. But you're quite right. Each date inside of the dates array is an object. What 2 properties does that object contain? A date property, yeah, and an isBank holiday property. So what could our test be? Just say it a little bit louder, Jonathan. Just say it again, a bit louder. So if is bank, tell me exactly what I need to write, yeah? I assume you don't want me to write that. So what's the test? So you're using the current value, which is date, okay. Dot isBank holiday. It's not auto-completing. Equals. One of those? True. Okay. Anything else? Lisa, what? Close. Close what? So I've closed the curly braces there, and I've closed the filter method there. I've closed the function there. I think it's okay. Definitely need a return, otherwise we're not going to get anything. We need a return because we use curly braces. It's not all in one line, and it's not normal parentheses.
Technically, could you just get rid of the triple equal sign and true?
Absolutely, yeah. I want to show it without first, and then we'll get rid of it. What was the other thing that we never did of yours? Sorry, we didn't do the object destructuring. We should try that soon if we get a chance. Yes, we need a little semicolon. Test that. Not quite. Because we have returned what? An array with the objects inside.
We need to return the length.
And we need to return the length. How do I do that? Dot length, yeah? Confetti time.
I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Especially you, Shimon, right?
Sorry, what was the dot length for there?
So look at the output of our question. We want 2, 1, and 0. So without the dot length, it's going to return an array with the matching elements inside. And the elements are objects, so we get something like this. You returned an array with 2 objects inside. If I could scroll across, I don't think I can. That's not what we wanted. We wanted just a number. So how do we find how many elements are in an array? Well, each array has a dot length property that we can call, and that will therefore turn it into a number. But Zara said something really interesting. I don't know whether everyone heard it. She said, can't technically we just get rid of the equals true? Yeah, because is bank holiday is already truthy or falsy, yeah? It's already distinguishing for us. So we don't need that extra condition. If is bank holiday is equal to true, it's going to get added into the array. If is bank holiday is false, of course it's going to ignore it. So that's a more concise way to write it. Now if we want to be really fancy and try and do everything on one line, we can get rid of the turn, get rid of the curly braces, do something like that. And it just about fits, right, without breaking our elegance limits. And that would also work. Happy? Yeah? Steffi, you right up there? Yeah, cool. Yeah, Gideon? Yeah. Monica? That's a silence, I have no idea what's going on. Alright, fair enough, I'll try and spend some time with you one-to-one, yeah, again soon. Let's do one intermediate for those that want it, and away we go. Map. No, we're just doing find and filter. It's the idea of the workshop. But do you want find or filter, guys? Someone else shout out. Fine, thank you. We had 2 finds and 1 filter, so yeah, and we did a beginner filter, so it makes sense to do a find one. So we got a string one. We got some scores with an object. We've got find the last word starting in capitals, okay. We've got find the repeated city and find the most populated country. What do you want to do? We've had 2 for the populated country. Are we happy with that? Yep. Okay. Can we see that okay? So we're going to need to use sort at some point, which is why it's given us a link to sorting arrays. So that's another array method. Why do we need to filter it? Find, sorry, yeah. Why do we need to find it?
Some of these questions you can actually do without using that.
Yeah. my obvious thing would not be to use find there. So what's it hoping to achieve? Yeah, but it's a bit pointless. You just index it, right? Why? Okay, can we find one that we definitely need to use find for? Because I would just sort that and then return the top element, right? That's the easiest way to go. Find the repeated city. I mean, that's quite a tough one. If you want to do that one,
Can we do that one?
yeah. Okay. Should be obvious, right? What we need to do. We've got an array with always 4 city names in. Sometimes they're repeated, sometimes they are not. If there are no repeats, we need to return undefined. If the word is repeated, then yes, we should return that word or that city. Okay. We're going to use find. So we've got an array of cities. Nice. Cities.find. Yeah, we're going to test each city. This time I'm going to put some extra arguments in there. Can anyone remember what those extra arguments were? The second one was the index. The third one was the original array. It was cities, but I'm just going to call it original array for now. I mean, we could just use cities, but it's there, so I'm going to use it. We don't really need a this argument, so I'm not going to add that one on. I've got an arrow function all set up nicely. Don't forget the semicolon. Yeah. Now, we need to check whether essentially each item in the array is present at any other position inside of the array. Yeah, so if we've got Vienna, we need to check index 1, 2 and 3 to see whether Vienna is also there. If we've got Florence, we need to check index 0, 2 and 3 and so on, yeah? But if we've already checked from the start, we technically don't need to check index 0 for Florence, right? Because when we had our element as index 0, then we've already checked all the remaining elements. So in other words, when we're on the first element, just check the remaining ones. When we're on the second element, just check the remaining ones. And that will cover all possible combinations. Does that logic at least hold up to most people, or am I talking rubbish? You think that logic holds up? Yeah, good. How do we write it in JavaScript? So I said we want to compare whether the current city or the current element I got to write it the other way around, but if the current city is included in the remaining array. So is current city included in the remaining array? That's our test. How do we write that in JavaScript? Is there a method that we can check to see whether an element exists in an array or a value exists in an array? Yeah, I use that word included for a reason. There is a JavaScript method called includes, and it's an array method. And we can see whether it includes a certain value. The certain value we're looking for in this case is the current value of the city. Includes is really handy for combining with find and filter. Why? Because it returns either true or false. That's all it returns. So of course, if our includes method returns true, then our find method should return the value of that city. This is okay, but I'm not sure whether it will work in all cases. we might need to stipulate not to search the whole array and just search a specific part of it, but I think it might still work in this instance. So we need a return, obviously, so we're returning that true or false. I'm going to delete my comment. Whoops. Should I just run it and see whether it works? And we can fix it if it doesn't. Yeah. You returned Lucerne. Exactly. Yeah. Because, well, anyone know why?
Because they're all included.
Yeah, of course, right? So we're searching whether the city is in the original array. Well, of course it is, because that's where we got it from. So it's just returning the first element each time. So we need to add an extra condition on the includes. We need to say start searching from the next element onwards. How would we indicate the next element in the array from the current one?
Plus 1.
Index plus 1. Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how we do it in this case. I mean, that wouldn't return the value of Valencia, but it would at least return the next index. Yeah. So when we add a second argument to includes, it searches from that point in the array onwards. So when we're on Vienna, it's searching from index 1 onwards. When it's on, again, Lucerne, it's searching from index 1 onwards. When it's on here, Valencia, it searches from index 2 onwards, and so forth. Let's test it now, and that's it. That's the simplest way to do that. Otherwise, I think it gets a bit complicated. You'd have to have maybe even nested loops, right? And it's not very nice. We've essentially got a nested loop there because find is looping over and includes is looping over, right? So you have got nested loops, but it's a lot more readable and understandable using semantic methods like that.
What it's doing is include.
Includes is looping over every single, well, okay, not really. Includes is checking the array that you've called it on, and it's looking for this value, the value of the first argument, which in this case is city, from this point onwards. If you don't stipulate that point, then it just searches the whole array for that value.
But when in find.
But when in find, it's doing the same thing, right? So that's an isolated bit of code. That bit of code will return either true or false, and then that true or false value gets passed up to the find method. So it includes does the same as what it always does. It doesn't change based on the context. It returns either true or false.
To me, that sounds like, index plus 1 sounds like it's not looking at the first one.
It's not looking at the, well, it's looking at the next index. So
It doesn't need to check the first one.
it doesn't need to check the first one because
Also,
we're looking for a repeated city. We're not just checking whether Vienna's there. We're checking whether Vienna is repeated.
yeah. So it's checking the first one of all three of them.
First of all, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it
okay.
doesn't find a match, such as in the case of Lucerne,
Yeah.
it checks the next one, Valencia, but we're already on index 1, so it checks from index 2 onwards.
Yeah. I was thinking that it was going array by array.
No. So, see you, Lisa. So it's just checking the individual array. In fact, as the very last thing, I should have done it earlier. Will it even let highlight that? No, it won't, will it? If we go back to DevTools, a really useful exercise for you to make sure you've understood. DevTools is gone again, isn't it? Yeah. Is to work out what line runs first and how many times and things like that. So, as an example, find the repeated city. Find repeated city, and then our input. I'm not going to do the actual city names, but hopefully you get the idea. Got city AB, city CD, city CD, city EF. Okay. Does anyone know how to add breakpoints in DevTools? So a breakpoint is just a point where your code's going to stop, and you can click any line and that will add a breakpoint there. Is it worth breaking this up further? Let's just try it like that. So my question to you is, how many times and in what order do these breakpoints run? Or how many times will it stop on these lines and in what order? Anyone is welcome to shout out there.
Will it go 7, 3, 4 in terms of lines?
Will it go 7, 3, 4?
Because you have to invoke the function first before lines 3 and 4 are read. Because they've just been declared at the moment. So the function itself doesn't run. Whereas when you invoke 7, it runs. So that's why I would say 7, 3, 4.
I agree with 7, 3, 4. Then, how many times does 7 run? How many times does 3 run? How many times does 4 run?
Three and 7 run once, and then 4 runs 4 times because it's a lengthy array.
7, 3, and then you said 4,
Yeah,
4, 4, 4, like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Pretty good attempt. Any disagreements with that? So Cam is saying first we declare the function and we store it in memory. So we haven't yet run whatever's inside of it. We then invoke it on line 7, and when we invoke it and pass some inputs, that means that line 3 will run. However, the find function should initiate its own callback to run the inner line, line number 4. That will definitely run once, and it will see whether the first city, AB, is included in the original array. Again, is it repeated? It won't find a repeat, so it will have to run line 4 again. The callback will have to run again.
So what does the second argument of the include methods mean or do?
What does it do? It starts the search from that point.
Okay.
Yeah?
So I'm not sure, but I think it's not because line 7,
Mm-hmm.
3, and 4, one time.
One time.
Because I'm not sure what how includes is up to me
So I think the bottom one, it will run twice, because the first time it won't find a match, the second time it will find a match.
Yeah.
So let's see. What was the question?
What's the output going to be?
No, what's the output going to be? How many...
How will it run?
These breakpoints, when is it going to stop on them, and how many times? Yeah, so it stops on 7 to begin with, then it stops on 3, then it stops on 4. We're all agreeing that so far. But then it runs 4 again if it doesn't find a match. So Cam said it would go once for every element in the array. Maybe he's changed his mind now, I don't know. Shimon said it runs definitely once, but then he's not quite sure what includes is doing. So is it just looping in that inner bit, or is it looping the whole of line 4? Fair enough. And then I think it does loop the whole of line 4 because it has to call all of this inner function again. So let's see. 7, good. It started there at least. We're on the right track. Where is my... Okay, so then this blue icon steps over the code. So my code is paused now at this point. That's what a breakpoint does. Useful for debugging. Click the step. Jumps up to 3. Our value of cities is that. We can check... we can't check yet because it hasn't run inside it. But yeah, in a minute we'll be able to check what index is, what city is, and what the original array is. Hasn't defined them yet. So now we're on line 4 because the callback function has been invoked by the find method. You can see that city is AB, which was the first element in the array. The index is 0, yeah, we're at the first element in the array, and the original array is whatever it was to begin with. So yeah, again these won't, oh these are, yep, so they're defined. So we've got AB searching from 0 plus 1. Cool. So we're searching for AB from index 1 in the array. Does 4 run again, or does 3 run again? So we're still on 4. We can tell it's a different iteration because the value of city has changed, right? In the original array, that was the second element at index 1. So we've now run 4 2 times. Will we run it again, is the question. No. Yeah, so line 4 only needs to run twice because at this point on the second iteration it finds a match. If I moved CD to the last element in the array, how many times would it run? Would it run 3?
No, it is hard to guess because the CET will be different.
So what do you think now? Is the general consensus saying it's going to run one more time? Yeah? Or no? Yeah? Anyone disagree? Okay.
I disagree.
I disagree too. Yeah.
But I disagree.
Still 2 times. Because we're searching on the second iteration for CD and it's found. It's still in the array. It's just moved 1 position further down. Include searches the whole array for this element. Yeah, so it would only get to this stage, to the third element, either if CD wasn't repeated, yeah, or nothing was repeated. And if nothing was repeated, it would run 4 times and then return undefined. We could see that. 7, 3, what's next? Yeah, what's next? Yeah, what's next? What's next? Anything else? No? Cool. Yeah? So, if that doesn't make sense, then it's time to put that code snippet in DevTools. Put the line breaks on yourself. Press play. And use that blue button to step through it step by step, and you will see exactly what the values of the variables are at each point. So I think that's a really useful way to understand what a function is doing and what order it is running in.
Can you send this
I will send
Script.
all 4 or 5 or whatever there are of those snippets. Absolutely. Yep. And we'll leave it there unless anyone's desperate for more find and filter.
How do we find that on our, if we go to snippets, how do we get that blue thing up?
So the blue little step through button
Yeah.
will only come up if you put some breakpoints on. So make sure that you save whatever file you're in. Once you've saved the file, it will allow you to click on the numbers and add these green breakpoints on the line, or even multiple ones per line perhaps. And then when you run it, that blue button will come up. It will stop your code and you'll be able to resume the script execution.
So what does the breakpoint do? It just stops there.
Yeah, it stops there unconditionally, yeah? When that line is met in the program, when that line runs in the program, it will stop. And it will give you feedback of what the value of the variables are at that point in the code.
Can you do that on VS Code, or is that just a snippets thing?
It's a JavaScript thing, or it's any programming language thing, really. Yeah, so a breakpoint is just a way of debugging code. So if you put a breakpoint, the code will stop there at that point.
Oh, so if you go on VS Code and start clicking on the numbers like that.
Ah, okay, I see what you're saying. So
Like how
to program it in JavaScript, you can use the word debugger, and that will stop at that point when that is reached. Or, no, you'd need some other sort of debugging extension, I think, in VS Code. I don't think it lets you do that by default. I'm probably going to stop the stream now, and I will